tightening them with each labored breath. The briefcase in his right hand suddenly weighed 1,000 pounds, and the world around him began to tilt sideways like a broken carnival ride. He had been walking from his private car to the entrance of Metropolitan General Hospital, where he served on the board of directors, when the pain struck with the force of a sledgehammer. Not the dull ache he had been ignoring for weeks, but something sharp and merciless that made his knees buckle and his vision blur. The prestigious businessman who commanded boardrooms and controlled billions of dollars was now just a man crumbling to his knees on a wet sidewalk, gasping for air that seemed to slip away like smoke. Through the haze of agony, he heard footsteps splashing through puddles, getting closer. A young woman's voice cut through the rain and his pain. "Sir, are you okay? Oh my God, you need help." Jonathan tried to speak, to tell her he was fine, that he just needed a moment, but the words came out as a strangled wheeze. He looked up through rain-soaked eyes and saw her. She was young, maybe 25, with beautiful dark skin glistening with raindrops and concerned brown eyes that seemed to see right through his expensive suit to the scared man underneath. Her clothes were worn and slightly too big, suggesting she had little money, but she knelt beside him without hesitation, her hands steady and sure. "I'm calling 911, she said, pulling out an old phone with a cracked screen. "Stay with me, okay? My name is Naomi." "What's your name?" "Jonathan," he managed to gasp, surprised by how good it felt to hear someone ask. When was the last time someone had asked his name with such genuine concern? Usually people knew who he was before he entered a room. Naomi spoke quickly to the emergency operator while keeping one hand on his shoulder, her touch surprisingly comforting. "Yes, he's conscious but having chest pain. We're outside Metropolitan General Hospital on 5th Street. Please hurry." She looked down at him with those kind eyes. "They're coming, Jonathan. Just keep breathing with me, okay?" As sirens wailed in the distance, getting louder, Jonathan realized something strange. This young woman, who clearly had so little, was giving him something he had not experienced in years. Someone was actually taking care of him, not because they wanted something from him, not because he paid them, but because she was simply a good person who saw someone in need. But what happens when the most powerful man in the city finds himself completely helpless, dependent on the kindness of someone society has forgotten? Can you imagine feeling so alone that a stranger's touch becomes your only comfort? If this story moves you, please hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think will happen next. The ambulance arrived with flashing lights that painted the wet street in reds and blues. Paramedics rushed over with their equipment, and Naomi stepped back to give them room. But as they loaded Jonathan onto a stretcher, he grabbed her hand. "Please," he whispered, "don't leave me." She looked surprised, then squeezed his hand gently. "I won't leave you, Jonathan. I promise." As they wheeled him into the ambulance, Naomi climbed in beside him, still holding his hand. She had no idea that the man she was comforting owned the very hospital they were rushing toward, or that her simple act of kindness was about to change both of their lives forever. The paramedic worked quickly, checking Jonathan's vital signs and asking questions that seemed to echo from far away. But through it all, Naomi stayed right there, her hand in his, her voice calm and reassuring. "You're going to be okay, Jonathan. The doctors here are really good. They'll take care of you." If only she knew, Jonathan thought through the haze of medication they had given him for the pain. These were his doctors, his hospital, his medical staff. He had donated millions to build the cardiac wing they were rushing toward. But none of that mattered now. All that mattered was the young woman beside him who had stopped her own life to make sure a stranger would not face this crisis alone. As the ambulance doors opened at the emergency room entrance, bright lights flooded in and medical staff surrounded the stretcher. But Naomi kept her promise. She walked right alongside them into the hospital, her presence like an anchor in the storm of medical urgency surrounding him. Dr. Patricia Reeves, the head of cardiology and someone Jonathan had known professionally for 5 years, looked shocked when she saw him on the stretcher. "Mr. Pierce? What happened?" But Jonathan was not looking at Dr. Reeves. He was looking at Naomi, who stood quietly by the wall, watching everything with those observant brown eyes, ready to help if needed. For the first time in longer than he could remember, Jonathan Pierce felt like someone actually cared about him as a person, not as a bank account or a business connection. "Chest pain," he managed to tell Dr. Reeves, still holding Naomi's hand. "This is Naomi. She found me." Dr. Reeves nodded to Naomi politely, then began giving orders to the medical team. They needed to run tests, do an EKG, check his blood pressure. The usual medical routine that Jonathan had watched from the administrative side but never experienced as a patient. As they prepared to wheel him to a room, Naomi started to pull her hand away. "I should go now. You're in good hands." No, Jonathan said more firmly than he had spoken since the pain began. Please stay. I need you here. She looked uncertain, glancing at the medical staff who were clearly puzzled by this homeless young woman's presence with one of the hospital's biggest donors. But Dr. Reeves, sensing something important was happening, nodded to Naomi. You can wait in the family area. We'll update you as soon as we know something. And so began the most unusual night in Jonathan Pierce's privileged life. As doctors ran test after test, trying to figure out what was wrong with his heart, the only person who stayed to wait for news was a young homeless woman who had every reason to walk away but chose to remain. The fluorescent lights in the hospital corridor buzzed like angry insects, casting everything in a harsh white glow that made the green walls look sickly. Naomi sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair in the family waiting area, her damp clothes slowly drying, leaving salt stains on the worn fabric. She had been there for 4 hours now, watching doctors and nurses rush back and forth, none of them telling her anything about Jonathan's condition. She did not belong here and everyone knew it. The other families in the waiting room wore nice clothes and spoke in hushed, educated tones about medical procedures and insurance coverage. They glanced at her with curiosity and sometimes distaste, wondering what a homeless woman was doing in their space. But Naomi had made a promise and she did not break promises. At around midnight, a tall man in an expensive coat approached her. He had the same strong jawline as Jonathan but cold gray eyes that looked at her like she was something unpleasant he had stepped in. Excuse me, are you the person who came in with my brother? Naomi stood up, suddenly aware of how her old sneakers squeaked on the polished floor. Yes, sir. I'm Naomi. I found Jonathan on the street and called for help. Well, thank you for that, he said, though his tone suggested he was not particularly grateful. I'm Richard Pierce. I can take over from here. You can go now. The dismissal stung, but Naomi had faced worse than a rich man's rudeness. I promised Jonathan I would stay. I'm going to keep that promise. Richard's eyebrows rose. Look, miss, I appreciate what you did, but this is a family matter now. Jonathan has the best medical care money can buy. He doesn't need. He gestured vaguely at her appearance, whatever this is. Before Naomi could respond, Dr. Reeves appeared around the corner, looking tired and frustrated. She glanced between Richard and Naomi, then addressed both of them. Are you Jonathan's family? I'm his brother, Richard said quickly. This person is just someone who helped him on the street. Dr. Reeves nodded to Richard, then looked at Naomi with more interest. Jonathan keeps asking for you. He wants to make sure you're still here. Richard frowned. He's probably confused from the medication. What's his condition? That's what's puzzling us, Dr. Reeves admitted. All his heart tests came back normal. EKG, blood work, chest x-rays. Everything looks fine. But he's still experiencing episodes of chest pain and shortness of breath. We're running more tests, but honestly we're not finding a physical cause. So he's faking it? Richard asked impatiently. No, definitely not. He's in real distress. Sometimes the body manifests stress and emotional trauma as physical symptoms. Has Jonathan been under unusual pressure lately? Richard snorted. Jonathan's always under pressure. He runs a multi-billion-dollar corporation. If stress was going to kill him, it would have happened years ago. Dr. Reeves looked thoughtful. Well, whatever is causing this, he specifically asked to see Naomi. Sometimes patients respond better to certain people during medical crises. Would you mind sitting with him for a while? Just until we figure out what's happening? Richard started to object, but Dr. Reeves was already leading Naomi down the hallway toward Jonathan's private room. He's been asking for you every few minutes. I've never seen him so focused on making sure someone was nearby. The room was dimly lit and filled with the quiet beeping of medical monitors. Jonathan lay in the hospital bed, looking pale and smaller than he had on the street. When he saw Naomi, his face relaxed for the first time since arriving at the hospital. You stayed, he said softly. I told you I would. Naomi pulled the visitor chair closer to his bed. How are you feeling? Better now that you're here. I know that sounds crazy, but every time I thought you might have left, the pain got worse. Dr. Reeves checked his monitors and made some notes on her tablet. Mr. Pierce, we're going to keep you overnight for observation. All your tests look good, but we want to make sure these episodes don't return. After Dr. Reeves left, Jonathan turned to Naomi. I heard Richard talking to you outside. I'm sorry if he was rude. It's okay. He's just worried about you. Jonathan gave a weak laugh. Richard's worried about the stock price if news gets out that I was hospitalized. We haven't been close in years. That's sad. Families should stick together. You stayed with a complete stranger for 4 hours. You have more loyalty than most of my actual family. Jonathan studied her face in the dim light. Can I ask you something? Why did you help me? Most people would have called 911 and kept walking. Naomi was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to explain something she had never really put into words. When I was 13, my mom collapsed at work. Heart attack. A coworker found her and stayed with her until the ambulance came, held her hand, told her she was going to be okay. Mom said later that woman's voice was what kept her fighting to stay conscious. She said knowing someone cared made all the difference. Did your mom make it? Yeah, she did. Lived another 8 years before cancer got her. But I never forgot what she said about how much it meant to have someone there who cared. Naomi looked down at her hands. I guess I just think everyone deserves to have someone care, you know? Jonathan felt something shift in his chest, and for once it was not pain. When was the last time someone had cared about his well-being without wanting something in return? When was the last time someone had seen him as just a person who needed help? Where do you live, Naomi? He asked gently. She hesitated. Different places. I move around a lot. You're homeless, he said, not as a question but as a gentle statement of fact. She nodded, waiting for the judgment that usually followed that admission. But Jonathan just looked sad. How long? About 2 years. Lost my job, couldn't make rent, and everything just went downhill from there. It happens faster than people think. And yet you spent your whole night taking care of a stranger. It was the right thing to do. Jonathan closed his eyes, feeling something he had not experienced in years. Humility. This young woman, who had nothing, had given him everything that mattered in a moment of crisis. She had given him her time, her comfort, her presence, and her kindness, asking for nothing in return. Naomi? Yeah. Thank you. Not just for tonight but for reminding me what real kindness looks like. As the night wore on, Naomi dozed in the chair beside his bed while Jonathan lay awake thinking. Every time he had another episode of chest pain, her presence seemed to calm something deep inside him. The doctors could run all the tests they wanted, but he was beginning to understand that whatever was wrong with him could not be fixed with medicine alone. Morning light filtered through the hospital room windows, casting long shadows across the white sheets. Jonathan woke slowly, his mind clearing from the fog of pain medication, and the first thing he saw was Naomi sitting in the chair beside his bed, reading a worn paperback novel. She had somehow found a hospital blanket and wrapped it around her shoulders. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and in the soft morning light, she looked even younger than he had thought. Good morning, she said when she noticed he was awake. How are you feeling? Jonathan took inventory of his body. The crushing chest pain was gone, replaced by a dull ache that felt manageable. Better. Much better. Did you sleep at all? A little. The nurses kept checking on you every hour, so I wanted to make sure you were okay. Dr. Reeves appeared in the doorway, looking more rested than she had the night before. Good morning, Mr. Pierce. How are we feeling today? The pain is mostly gone. Whatever you did worked. Dr. Reeves checked his monitors and made notes. Actually, we didn't do anything different. No new medications, no procedures. Your body seems to have sorted itself out. She glanced at Naomi. Although I notice your vital signs are much more stable when Naomi is in the room. Jonathan was not surprised by this information, but he was curious about what Dr. Reeves would make of it. Mr. Pierce, I've been practicing cardiology for 15 years, and I've learned that healing involves more than just medical intervention. Sometimes patients respond to emotional support in ways that medicine alone cannot achieve. She put her tablet away and looked directly at him. Your test results show a perfectly healthy heart, but you experienced a very real cardiac event yesterday. In my professional opinion, your body was responding to severe emotional stress. What kind of emotional stress? Jonathan asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Loneliness, anxiety, depression. These conditions can manifest as physical symptoms, including chest pain, shortness of breath, and even heart palpitations. It's more common than people realize, especially among high-achieving individuals who isolate themselves emotionally. Jonathan felt heat rise in his cheeks. He had built his entire adult life around control, success, and independence. The idea that loneliness could literally affect his heart felt like admitting weakness. Dr. Reeves continued, the good news is that you're medically fine. The concerning news is that if you don't address the underlying emotional factors, these episodes will likely continue and could get worse over time. After Dr. Reeves left, the room fell into comfortable quiet. Jonathan stared at the ceiling, processing what she had told him. Naomi went back to her book, giving him space to think. Can I ask you something? Jonathan finally said. Sure. Do you think I'm pathetic? A grown man who gets sick from loneliness. Naomi closed her book and looked at him with those warm brown eyes. I think you're human. Everybody needs connection, Jonathan. Rich people, poor people, it doesn't matter. We're not meant to go through life alone. I have employees, business associates, people who work for me. That's not the same thing as people who care about you as a person. Jonathan knew she was right, but hearing it said out loud was uncomfortable. I used to be married. Diana and I divorced 3 years ago. She said I was married to my work, not to her. Maybe she was right. Do you miss her? I miss the idea of having someone. But honestly, we weren't very close even when we were married. We looked good together at charity events and business functions, but we never really connected. He paused. I can't remember the last time someone asked me how I was feeling and actually wanted to know the answer. That sounds lonely. It is. I just never admitted it before. Jonathan turned to look at her. What about you? Do you have anyone? Naomi shook her head. My mom was really my only close family. After she died, I kinda shut down for a while. Lost touch with friends, lost my job, ended up on the streets. It's hard to maintain relationships when you're just trying to survive each day. So we're both alone. I guess so. But maybe that doesn't have to stay true forever. Before Jonathan could ask what she meant by that, his brother Richard appeared in the doorway with 2 other people Jonathan recognized as board members from Pierce Industries. They looked uncomfortable and impatient. Jonathan, we need to talk, Richard said, barely glancing at Naomi. The company needs you to make some decisions about the Morrison acquisition, and the press is starting to ask questions about why you missed yesterday's board meeting. Jonathan felt the familiar tightness in his chest begin to return. The world of business demands and expectations was rushing back, threatening to crush him again. But then Naomi quietly reached over and touched his hand, and the panic subsided. Give me 5 more minutes, Jonathan told his brother. Then we can talk business. Richard looked irritated but nodded, leading the other board members out to the hallway. Are you okay? Naomi asked, noticing the change in his breathing. I think I'm starting to understand what Dr. Reeves meant about emotional stress. Every time I think about going back to my normal life, I start feeling that chest pain again. Maybe your normal life needs to change. Jonathan had never considered that possibility before. He had built his identity around being successful, powerful, and completely self-reliant. The idea of changing that felt terrifying and exciting at the same time. Naomi, can I ask you for a favor? Of course. Would you stay with me for a few more days? Just until I figure some things out? I know you don't owe me anything, but I feel better when you're around, and I'm not ready to face everything alone yet. Naomi smiled, the first real smile he had seen from her. I don't have anywhere else to be, Jonathan. If you need me to stay, I'll stay. Thank you. Jonathan felt something loosen in his chest, something that had been tight for years. And Naomi? When I get out of here, I want to help you too. You shouldn't have to live on the streets. You don't need to do that. I want to. You saved my life yesterday not just by calling 911, but by showing me what it feels like to have someone actually care. Let me do something for you in return. For a moment, Naomi looked like she might argue, but then she nodded. Okay. Thank you. As Richard and the board members returned to discuss business, Jonathan felt ready to face them. Having Naomi there, knowing that someone cared about his well-being rather than just his productivity, made all the difference. He was beginning to understand that healing his heart was going to involve more than just medical care. It was going to require him to completely reimagine what his life could look like. The next morning, Dr. Reeves discharged Jonathan with instructions to rest, avoid stress, and follow up with his regular physician. As they prepared to leave the hospital, Jonathan realized he had no idea where Naomi would go. She had spent 2 nights sleeping in an uncomfortable hospital chair, and now she was gathering her few belongings into a plastic bag. Where will you stay tonight? He asked as they waited for his driver to pick them up. There's a shelter downtown that sometimes has space. If not, I know some safe places to sleep outside. The thought of Naomi returning to the streets after everything she had done for him felt wrong. Jonathan made a decision that surprised even himself. Come home with me. I have a guest house that you can use. Naomi looked startled. Jonathan, that's very generous, but you don't know me. I could be dangerous or steal from you or... You spent 3 days taking care of a stranger in a hospital. You're the least dangerous person I've ever met. He paused. Besides, I'm still not feeling completely well. Having you nearby would make me feel more secure. This was only partially true. Jonathan was feeling much better physically, but the thought of being alone in his big empty house made his chest tighten with anxiety. Having Naomi close by had become a comfort he was not ready to give up. When his driver arrived, the man tried to hide his surprise at seeing Jonathan with a homeless young woman, but years of working for wealthy families had taught him discretion. The ride to Jonathan's estate in the hills outside the city was quiet, with Naomi staring out the window at neighborhoods that got progressively more expensive. "This is where you live?" she asked as they pulled through tall iron gates and up a circular driveway to a massive stone house surrounded by manicured gardens. "It's too big for one person," Jonathan admitted. "I bought it thinking Diana and I would have children, but that never happened." The guest house was actually a small cottage at the back of the property, complete with its own kitchen, bathroom, and bedroom. It was bigger than most apartments Naomi had ever lived in, and infinitely nicer than anywhere she had stayed in the past 2 years. "This is beautiful," she said, running her hand along the granite countertop in the kitchen. "Are you sure about this?" "I'm sure. Stay as long as you want. There's food in the refrigerator, and Mrs. Chen, my housekeeper, comes every few days. She can get you anything you need." That evening, Jonathan sat in his main house, which suddenly felt even larger and emptier than usual. He tried to work, reading through reports and emails, but found himself distracted. Around 7 o'clock he walked over to the guest house and knocked on the door. Naomi answered wearing the same clothes she had worn to the hospital, but she had showered and looked more relaxed than he had ever seen her. "Hi. Is everything okay? I was wondering if you wanted to have dinner together. Mrs. Chen left a casserole and it's too much for one person." They ate at his kitchen table, which seated 12 people but had not hosted a real meal in months. Naomi told him about her mother, who had worked as a nurse, and her dream of going back to school someday to study social work. Jonathan found himself talking about his childhood, growing up with parents who were always traveling or working, leaving him and Richard with a series of nannies and housekeepers. "Is that why you and Richard aren't close?" Naomi asked. "Maybe. We learned early that we had to take care of ourselves. Richard handled it by becoming ruthless in business. I handled it by becoming completely self-sufficient. Neither of us learned how to actually connect with other people." Over the next few days they fell into a comfortable routine. Naomi would check on Jonathan each morning, making sure he was taking his medications and eating properly. She was a natural caregiver, noticing things that others missed. When he seemed stressed after phone calls with his office, she would suggest they take walks around the property. When he had trouble sleeping because of anxiety, she would sit with him and talk until he felt calmer. "You're better than any doctor I've ever had," Jonathan told her one afternoon as they sat by the pool. "How do you know exactly what I need? My mom was sick for a long time before she died. I learned to pay attention to little things like changes in breathing or posture that might mean someone's having problems. You would have made a great nurse. Maybe someday I still will." Jonathan had been thinking about this conversation for several days. That evening he made another decision that felt both scary and right. "Naomi, I want to pay for you to go to college." She looked up from the book she was reading, startled. "What? You want to study social work, right? I want to pay your tuition, living expenses, everything you need to get your degree." "Jonathan, that's incredibly generous, but I can't accept that much help from you." "Why not?" "Because I haven't done anything to deserve it. You saved my life. You took care of me when I was scared and alone. You've shown me kindness when you had no reason to. If that doesn't deserve help, what does?" Naomi was quiet for a long time, and Jonathan worried he had offended her by offering too much too quickly. "It's not that I don't appreciate the offer," she finally said. "It's just that I've been taking care of myself for so long, accepting help feels strange. I understand that feeling. But sometimes we need to let other people care for us. You taught me that. Can I think about it?" "Of course. Take all the time you need." That night, Jonathan lay in bed feeling more hopeful than he had in years. For the first time since his divorce, he was not just thinking about his work or his business success. He was thinking about building a real relationship with another person, about using his resources to make someone else's life better, about what it might feel like to truly care for someone and have them care for him in return. He was also thinking about how beautiful Naomi looked when she smiled, how her laugh made him feel lighter, and how much he looked forward to seeing her each morning. These were dangerous thoughts for a man who had convinced himself he was better off alone, but they were also thoughts that made him feel more alive than he had in years. 2 weeks into their unusual arrangement, Jonathan and Naomi had settled into a friendship that felt both natural and surprising. Each evening they would cook dinner together in his large kitchen, and Jonathan discovered that domestic life was more enjoyable than he had ever imagined. Naomi was an excellent cook who could create delicious meals from simple ingredients, while Jonathan contributed by learning to chop vegetables and set the table properly. "You've never cooked for yourself?" Naomi asked one evening as she watched him struggle to dice an onion. "I've had housekeepers and personal chefs since college. Before that, my parents had full kitchen staff." He paused his clumsy knife work. "I know how pathetic that sounds." "It's not pathetic, just different. But cooking can be really relaxing once you get the hang of it." She moved behind him to guide his hands, showing him how to hold the knife properly and cut evenly. Her presence so close to him made Jonathan's heart beat faster, but not with the anxiety that had been plaguing him for months. This was a different kind of increased heartbeat, one that felt warm and pleasant. After dinner, they had gotten into the habit of sitting in his living room and talking. Tonight, Naomi was curled up on the sofa with her legs tucked under her, looking comfortable in a way that made the large room feel cozy for the first time in years. "Can I ask you something personal?" Jonathan said from his chair across from her. "Sure. What was it like being homeless? I mean, really, like day to day?" Naomi was quiet for a moment, considering how to explain something she had never really talked about with anyone. The hardest part wasn't being hungry or cold, though those were definitely hard. The hardest part was being invisible. People look right through you like you're not even human. After a while, you start to feel like maybe you really aren't worth seeing. Jonathan felt a stab of guilt, remembering all the times he had walked past homeless people without really noticing them. "Where did you sleep?" "Different places. There's a 24-hour laundromat on Pine Street where the owner sometimes let me stay if I helped fold clothes. In summer, I would sleep in the park, but you had to be careful about the police. In winter, the subway tunnels were warmer, but also more dangerous." "Dangerous how?" "Some people who live on the streets have serious mental health problems or drug addictions. Most of them are harmless, but not all of them. And then there are people who target the homeless because they know no one will look for us if we disappear." Jonathan had never considered that homelessness involved actual physical danger. In his world, problems were solved with money and lawyers and security systems. "Were you ever hurt?" "A few times. Nothing too serious, but enough to teach me to be very careful about who I trusted and where I slept." She looked at him curiously. "What about you? What was your childhood really like? All that money and success must have been nice." "In some ways, yes. I never worried about having food or a place to sleep. But money doesn't create emotional warmth. My parents were both very focused on their careers and their social status. They had parties almost every weekend with important people who talked about important things, but I don't remember many times when we just sat together as a family and talked like this." "That sounds lonely too, just in a different way." "I think it was. Richard and I learned to compete for attention by achieving things. Good grades, sports trophies, acceptance to prestigious universities. But even when we succeeded, the approval felt temporary. There was always the next thing to achieve, the next level to reach." "Is that why you work so much now?" Jonathan considered this. "Probably. Work is something I can control. If I work hard enough and make smart decisions, I get predictable results. Relationships are messier and more unpredictable, but also more rewarding when they work right." "I'm starting to understand that," Jonathan said, looking directly at her. The next morning, Naomi surprised him by asking if she could see his office. Jonathan worked from home several days a week, and she had noticed him taking calls in a room she had never entered. When he showed her his home office, with its wall of windows overlooking the city, expensive furniture and multiple computer monitors, she whistled softly. "This is impressive. You can see the whole city from here. Sometimes I sit here at night and look out at all the lights and wonder what people are doing in their homes. Whether they're happy, whether they're lonely, whether they have people who care about them. It sounds like you were lonely long before you ended up in the hospital." I just didn't let myself admit it." He paused. "Naomi, I've been thinking about your college situation. Have you decided what you want to do?" She had been avoiding this conversation, but she knew they needed to have it eventually. "I want to accept your help, but I'm scared." "Scared of what?" "What if I'm not smart enough? What if I can't handle college after being out of school for so long? What if I disappoint you?" Jonathan turned his chair to face her fully. "Naomi, you are one of the most intelligent, capable people I've ever met. You diagnosed my emotional problems better than trained doctors did. You've survived on your own in circumstances that would break most people. You have natural instincts for taking care of others that can't be taught. Any college would be lucky to have you. And if I fail? Then you try again. Or you try something different. But you don't let fear keep you from trying at all." That afternoon, they drove to the local community college to pick up admission applications. As they walked across the campus, Naomi looked around with wonder at the students carrying books, sitting under trees, walking between classes with purpose and hope. "I used to dream about this when I was living on the streets," she said quietly. "Having a reason to get up in the morning, having goals again, feeling like my life was moving forward instead of just surviving." "You can have all of that, Naomi. You just have to be willing to accept help when it's offered." She stopped walking and looked at him seriously. "Why are you doing this for me, Jonathan? Really? Because you saved my life and I want to do the same for you. Because you've shown me what real kindness looks like and I want to practice it. Because you make me feel less alone in the world, and I hope maybe I do the same for you. Are you starting to see how two broken people can heal each other? How love grows from the simplest acts of kindness." If you're enjoying this story and want to see how Jonathan and Naomi's relationship develops, please subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments below. Naomi smiled, the warm, genuine smile that never failed to make Jonathan's day brighter. "Okay, let's get those applications." As they walked toward the admissions building together, both of them felt like they were taking the first steps toward a future neither of them had dared to imagine just weeks before. 3 weeks after filling out college applications, Naomi received acceptance letters from both the community college and a 4-year university program. She ran from the guest house to Jonathan's office, waving the letters in the air, more excited than he had ever seen her. "I got in. Both schools accepted me." Jonathan stood up from his desk and, without thinking, pulled her into a hug. She hugged him back and for a moment they stood there holding each other, celebrating her success. When they separated, both of them looked slightly surprised by the embrace, but neither seemed uncomfortable with it. "I'm so proud of you," Jonathan said. "Which program do you want to choose?" "The 4-year university has a better social work program, but it's also much more expensive. Cost is not a factor. Choose the program that will make you happiest." Naomi looked down at the acceptance letters, still hardly believing they were real. "Jonathan, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me." "Okay. Are you helping me because you feel sorry for me or because you want something from me, or because you genuinely think I deserve this chance?" The question caught Jonathan off guard, but he realized it was important to answer it correctly. At first, maybe it was partly guilt. "I felt bad that someone with so little had given me so much, and I wanted to balance that somehow. But now I'm helping you because I care about you as a person, and I want to see you achieve your dreams. And you don't expect anything in return? I expect you to work hard and make the most of this opportunity. I expect you to stay in touch and let me know how you're doing. And I hope you'll consider me a friend, because that's what you've become to me." Naomi nodded slowly. "Okay. Then I accept your help and I choose the 4-year program. Thank you, Jonathan. This is the best gift anyone has ever given me. You've given me a pretty amazing gift too." "What's that?" "You've given me a reason to care about something besides work and money. You've shown me what my life could look like if I focused on relationships and helping others instead of just accumulating more success." That evening, they celebrated with a special dinner that Jonathan had catered from Naomi's favorite restaurant. As they ate, they talked about her course schedule, what classes she was most excited about, and where she would live while attending school. "The university has dormitories," Naomi said. "I could stay there and get the full college experience. You could also stay here and commute. The drive is only about 30 minutes. Would you want me to stay?" Jonathan set down his fork and looked at her seriously. "Yes, I would like you to stay. But I want you to make the choice that's best for your education and your future, not the choice that makes me feel less lonely. What if both choices feel good to me? Then stay," he said quickly, then smiled at his own eagerness. "I mean, if you're sure that's what you want." "I'm sure. Living here has been the most stable and peaceful time I've had in years. Plus, someone needs to make sure you eat proper meals and don't work yourself into another health crisis." "So you're staying to take care of me?" "I'm staying because this feels like home and you feel like family." The word family hit Jonathan harder than he expected. He had not felt like part of a family since he was a child, and even then, his family had been more about appearances than genuine affection. Over the next few days, they settled into preparations for Naomi's return to school. Jonathan enjoyed buying her textbooks, a laptop computer, and new clothes that would help her feel confident on campus. He also set up a bank account in her name with enough money to cover all her expenses, plus extra for emergencies. "This is too much," Naomi protested when she saw the amount in the account. "It's not too much. It's what you need to focus on school without worrying about money." "But what if people think I'm with you for your money?" "What people?" Other students, professors, anyone who finds out a billionaire is paying for my education. Jonathan had not considered this perspective. Are you with me for my money? Of course not. I was taking care of you before I even knew you had money. Then it doesn't matter what other people think. The people whose opinions matter will see who you really are. The night before her first day of classes, Naomi was too nervous to eat dinner. She kept reviewing her schedule and worrying about whether she would fit in with the other students. What if I don't belong there? What if everyone can tell I used to be homeless? Jonathan sat down beside her on the sofa. Naomi, you belong anywhere you want to be. Your past experiences don't make you less valuable than anyone else. If anything, they make you more understanding and compassionate than most people your age. What if I've forgotten how to be a student? What if I can't keep up with the coursework? Then you ask for help. You work harder. You remember why you wanted this opportunity in the first place. He paused. And you remember that I believe in you completely. She looked at him with those warm brown eyes that had become so dear to him. Thank you, Jonathan. Not just for the money, but for believing I could do this when I didn't believe it myself. Thank you for teaching me what it feels like to care about someone else's happiness more than my own success. They sat together in comfortable silence, both of them aware that their relationship was changing into something deeper than friendship, but neither quite ready to name what that something was. For now, it was enough to know that they had found each other at exactly the right time, when both of them needed someone to believe in them and care for them. Naomi's first semester of college exceeded all her expectations. She threw herself into her social work classes with passion and dedication that impressed her professors and classmates. Her life experience gave her insights that enhanced every discussion, and her natural empathy made her a favorite among both faculty and students. Jonathan found himself looking forward to her return each evening, eager to hear about her classes, her professors, and the projects she was working on. Their dinner conversations became the highlight of his day, and he realized he was learning as much from her stories as she was from her formal education. We're studying family dynamics this week, Naomi told him one evening as they cleaned dishes together. It's really interesting how childhood experiences shape adult relationships. What kind of childhood experiences? Things like whether your parents were emotionally available, whether you felt secure or anxious as a child, whether your family talked about feelings or avoided them. She paused, looking thoughtful. It makes me understand why some adults have trouble forming close relationships. Jonathan knew she was referring to him at least partially. And what's the solution for adults who missed out on healthy family dynamics as children? The good news is that people can learn new relationship patterns at any age. It just takes patience and practice, and usually it helps to have someone who models healthier behaviors. Someone like you? Someone like both of us, actually. I think we're both learning how to be close to another person without being afraid. This was true. Over the past few months, Jonathan had noticed changes in himself that went beyond his improved physical health. He was more patient with his employees, more generous in his business dealings, and more interested in using his wealth for charitable purposes. He had started a scholarship fund for students from low-income families, inspired directly by watching Naomi flourish when given educational opportunities. But the most significant change was in how he thought about his personal life. For the first time in years, he looked forward to coming home. He enjoyed simple domestic activities like grocery shopping and cooking. He found himself making plans that included another person's preferences and schedule. Naomi, can I tell you something? He said one evening as they sat in the living room reading. Sure. I think I'm falling in love with you. She looked up from her textbook, not seeming surprised by his admission. I think I'm falling in love with you too. Is that okay? I mean, given our circumstances, the age difference, the financial situation. The age difference is only 8 years, Jonathan. That's not significant between adults. As for the financial situation, I love you for who you are, not what you have. But some people might think. Some people will always find something to criticize. The question is whether we care more about what other people think or about what makes us happy. Jonathan set down his book and moved to the sofa beside her. What makes me happy is spending time with you. What makes me happy is seeing you succeed in school. What makes me happy is imagining a future where we're together. What would that future look like? I don't know exactly. I've never planned a future around another person before. But I'd like to find out if you're willing. Naomi reached for his hand. I'm willing. But I need you to know that I want to finish my education and have my own career. I don't want to be someone who just lives off your money. I wouldn't want that either. I fell in love with your intelligence and your independence. I wouldn't want you to give those up. And I need you to know that I'm not interested in a lifestyle where we just attend fancy parties and socialize with rich people. That's not who I am. It's not who I want to be either anymore. I want a real life with real relationships and genuine connections to other people. They talked late into the night about what their life together might look like. Jonathan was willing to scale back his business involvement to spend more time focused on philanthropy and family life. Naomi wanted to work with disadvantaged youth after graduation, using her own experiences to help others who were struggling. We'll need to take things slowly, Naomi said. I don't want to rush into anything that might damage what we've built together. Agreed. We have time to figure everything out. Over the following weeks, their relationship deepened gradually and naturally. They held hands during their evening walks around the property. Jonathan would kiss her forehead when he said goodnight. Naomi would rest her head on his shoulder while they watched movies together. The physical affection felt different from anything Jonathan had experienced in his marriage. With Diana, intimacy had been another item on his schedule, something to be managed efficiently. With Naomi, every touch felt meaningful, every kiss felt like a gift they were giving each other. One evening, as they sat by the fireplace, Naomi asked him about his business plans for the future. I've been thinking about transitioning to more of an advisory role, Jonathan said. Let Richard and the other executives handle the day-to-day operations while I focus on strategic planning and philanthropic projects. Would you be happy with that? I think I would be happier than I've ever been. For the first time in my adult life, I have something more important to me than work success. What's that? Building a life with you. Creating a family. Making a positive difference in other people's lives. Naomi smiled and moved closer to him on the sofa. That sounds like a beautiful life, Jonathan. As winter turned to spring, both of them felt confident that they had found something rare and valuable in each other. They had learned to trust each other completely, to communicate openly about their feelings and concerns, and to build a partnership based on mutual respect and genuine affection. Their love story was unconventional, but it was also authentic in a way that both of them had been searching for all their lives. 6 months into Naomi's college program, Jonathan's health took an unexpected turn for the worse. He had been feeling fine, managing his business responsibilities while spending quality time with Naomi, when the chest pain returned suddenly and violently during a particularly stressful board meeting. Richard called Naomi at school, his voice tight with worry. He collapsed again just like before. The ambulance took him to Metropolitan General, but he kept asking for you. Can you come? Naomi left her psychology class immediately and drove to the hospital, her heart racing with fear. She had thought Jonathan's health crisis was behind them. 4 months, he had been taking better care of himself, managing stress more effectively, and seemed genuinely happier than she had ever seen him. When she arrived at the emergency room, Dr. Reeves met her with a concerned expression. His symptoms are more severe this time, but again, all his tests are coming back normal. His heart function is fine, his blood work is fine, but he's in significant distress. Can I see him? Please? He's been asking for you constantly. Jonathan was in the same type of hospital room where their relationship had begun, looking pale and frightened. When he saw Naomi, he reached for her hand immediately. You came, he said, his voice weak. Of course I came. How are you feeling? Better now. But Naomi, I'm scared. What if this keeps happening? What if next time it's more serious? Dr. Reeves came in to check his monitors. Mr. Pierce, I need to ask you some questions. Has anything changed in your life recently? Any new stressors or concerns? Jonathan looked at Naomi, then back at Dr. Reeves. Actually, yes. My life has gotten much better recently. I'm happier than I've been in years. But maybe that's making me more afraid of losing what I have. Can you explain what you mean? Before, when I was just focused on work, I didn't have much to lose emotionally. If something happened to me, it wouldn't really affect anyone else. But now I have Naomi, and the thought of something happening to me, of leaving her alone, is terrifying. Dr. Reeves nodded thoughtfully. So you're experiencing anxiety about your own mortality because you now have something precious that you don't want to lose? I think so. During the board meeting today, we were discussing some risky investments, and I started thinking about what would happen to Naomi if those investments failed, or if something happened to me and the chest pain started. Jonathan, Naomi said gently, you can't make yourself sick worrying about theoretical problems. But what if they're not theoretical? What if I die and leave you with nothing? What if my business fails and I can't take care of you? Dr. Reeves looked between them. Mr. Pierce, it sounds like your anxiety has shifted from fear of loneliness to fear of loss. Both are forms of anxiety that can manifest as physical symptoms, but this is actually a positive development. How is this positive? Jonathan asked. Because fear of loss means you have something valuable to lose. Your anxiety is coming from love now, not from isolation. That's much healthier, even though it doesn't feel better right now. Over the next few hours, as Jonathan's symptoms gradually subsided, he and Naomi talked about his fears. She helped him understand that while it was natural to worry about protecting the people you love, he couldn't let that worry consume him. Jonathan, we can't control everything that might happen in the future, she said as they sat together in the quiet hospital room. All we can do is make good decisions today and trust that we'll handle whatever comes. But I want to make sure you're secure no matter what happens to me. I'm more secure now than I've ever been, not because of your money, but because I have an education, job skills, and someone who loves me. Even if something happened to you, which it won't, I could take care of myself. Are you sure? I'm sure. I was taking care of myself before I met you, remember? I'm much stronger now. That conversation helped Jonathan realize that part of his anxiety came from not trusting Naomi's strength and independence. He had been trying to protect her like she was helpless, when in reality she was one of the most capable people he knew. Dr. Reeves kept him overnight for observation, and once again, Naomi stayed in the chair beside his bed. But this time their conversation was different. Instead of talking about loneliness and isolation, they talked about building a future together that would be secure but not anxiety-driven. I want to make some changes, Jonathan said. I want to establish a trust fund that will provide for you independently, whether we're together or not. Not because I think anything will happen to our relationship, but because I want you to feel completely free to make choices based on what you want, not what you need financially. Jonathan, you don't need to do that. I want to do it. And I want to restructure my business involvement so that my stress level is more manageable. I never want to end up in a hospital bed again because I'm too anxious to think clearly. What would make you less anxious? Knowing that you're taken care of, that our relationship is based on choice rather than necessity, and that I'm contributing to the world in positive ways rather than just making money. The next morning, Jonathan was discharged with a clean bill of health and a prescription for anti-anxiety medication to use as needed. But more importantly, he left the hospital with a clearer understanding of how to build a life that was fulfilling rather than fear-based. As they drove home together, Naomi asked him, "Are you okay with the idea that loving someone means accepting some level of vulnerability?" "I'm learning to be okay with it. It's worth it to have you in my life." "Good. Because I feel the same way about you." Spring semester ended with Naomi earning straight A's in all her classes, and Jonathan felt more proud of her academic success than any business achievement he had ever accomplished. They celebrated with a quiet dinner at home, toasting her accomplishments with wine and talking about her plans for summer courses. "I've been thinking about something," Naomi said as they sat on the terrace overlooking the city lights. "I want to do an internship this summer with a homeless services organization. I think it would help me understand how to better serve that population when I graduate." "That's a wonderful idea. Do you have a specific organization in mind?" "Actually, I was hoping we could start one together." Jonathan set down his wine glass and looked at her with interest. "What kind of organization?" "A comprehensive program that provides not just food and shelter, but also mental health services, job training, and educational support. Something that addresses the root causes of homelessness, not just the symptoms." "You've really thought this through." "I've been working on a proposal for my social policy class." "Want to see it?" She disappeared into the guest house and returned with a thick folder full of research, budget projections, and program designs. For the next 2 hours, she walked Jonathan through her vision for a holistic approach to ending homelessness in their city. "This is incredible, Naomi. You've identified gaps in existing services that I never even knew existed. That's because you've never needed those services. But I have, and I know what would have made the biggest difference in my situation." Jonathan flipped through her research, impressed by the thoroughness of her work and the practical wisdom of her recommendations. How much funding would something like this require? For the first year, probably around $2 million. That sounds like a lot, but it's actually less than most traditional programs spend, and it would be much more effective. $2 million is not a lot of money to me, Naomi. This is exactly the kind of project I want to invest in. Her eyes widened. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious. Let's do it. Let's start the organization this summer." Naomi jumped up from her chair and hugged him, both of them laughing with excitement. "I can't believe this is really happening. I can't believe I get to do something this meaningful with the person I love most in the world." The word love had been spoken casually between them for months, but something about saying it in this context felt more significant. They looked at each other for a long moment, both recognizing that their relationship had reached a new level of commitment and partnership. "Jonathan," Naomi said softly, "I love you too. Not just as someone who changed my life, but as the person I want to spend my life with." "Are you sure? We come from such different backgrounds. Our backgrounds brought us different strengths. Your business skills and resources, my life experience and understanding of social problems. Together, we can do things neither of us could do alone." That night, they made love for the first time, and it was everything Jonathan had hoped it would be. Tender, passionate, and full of the deep emotional connection that had been building between them for months. Afterward, they lay together talking about their future, making plans that included both the homeless services organization and their life as a couple. "I want to marry you," Jonathan said as they watched the sunrise through the bedroom windows. "I want to marry you too." "When?" "After I graduate. I want to finish my degree first, and I want our organization to be up and running. I want to come into our marriage as your equal partner, not as someone you rescued." "You've never been someone I rescued, Naomi. You've been someone who rescued me." Over the following days, they told Richard and a few close friends about their engagement. The reactions were mixed. Richard was skeptical, worrying that people would think Jonathan was having a midlife crisis or that Naomi was after his money. But Dr. Reeves, who had watched their relationship develop, was delighted. "I've never seen you happier or healthier," she told Jonathan during his regular checkup. "Whatever you two are doing, it's working." Naomi's professors were equally supportive, particularly when they learned about the homeless services organization she would be launching. Several offered to serve on the advisory board, providing academic expertise to support the practical programming. As summer began, Jonathan and Naomi threw themselves into developing their organization, which they named New Horizons Community Services. They leased a building downtown, hired a small staff of social workers and case managers, and began offering services to homeless individuals and families. Naomi's understanding of what people in crisis actually needed, combined with Jonathan's business acumen and financial resources, created a program that was both innovative and effective. Within the first month, they were helping 50 people transition from homelessness to stable housing, and the waiting list for services was growing rapidly. "I never imagined work could feel this fulfilling," Jonathan told Naomi as they toured their facility one evening. "Making money was satisfying, but this feels like making a real difference." "That's because it is making a real difference. Look at what we've accomplished already." They stopped in front of a bulletin board covered with thank you notes from program participants, photos of families who had found permanent housing, and updates from people who had reconnected with family members or found employment. "These are the results that matter," Naomi said, pointing to a photo of a young mother with her 2 children in their new apartment. "This is what success looks like." Jonathan pulled her close and kissed her forehead. "I love you, Naomi Washington. I love your heart, your mind, your strength, and your vision for making the world better. I love you too, Jonathan Pierce. And I love the man you've become since we've been together." As they stood there surrounded by evidence of the positive change they were creating together, both of them felt certain that they had found not only love but purpose. Their relationship had healed both of their hearts and given them a shared mission that would sustain them for the rest of their lives. 2 years later, on a bright Saturday morning in June, Jonathan Pierce and Naomi Washington were married in the garden of their home. The ceremony was small and intimate, with only their closest friends and family in attendance. Dr. Reeves served as Naomi's matron of honor, while Richard, who had gradually come to appreciate his brother's happiness, stood as Jonathan's best man. Naomi wore a simple white dress that she had chosen herself, her hair adorned with flowers from their garden. Jonathan wore a light gray suit and could not stop smiling as he watched his bride walk toward him. When they exchanged vows, both of them spoke about finding healing and purpose in their love for each other. "You saved my life in every way that matters," Jonathan said, holding her hands as they stood beneath an arch of roses. "You taught me what it means to love and be loved, to care about something bigger than myself, and to find joy in simple moments shared with someone special." "You gave me back my future," Naomi replied, her voice steady despite her tears of happiness. "You believed in me when I had stopped believing in myself, and you showed me that love can be a foundation for building something beautiful together." The reception was held on the terrace overlooking the city, with tables full of food prepared by Mrs. Chen and decorations created by volunteers from New Horizons Community Services. Many of their wedding guests were people whose lives had been transformed by their organization, creating a celebration that felt more like a family reunion than a formal event. During his toast, Richard surprised everyone by speaking emotionally about watching his brother become the man he was always meant to be. I didn't understand what was happening when Jonathan first told me about Naomi, he admitted. I thought he was making impulsive decisions based on gratitude or guilt. But I was wrong. What I was actually watching was my brother learning how to live fully for the first time in his adult life. Dr. Reeves spoke about the medical miracle she had witnessed. I've been practicing medicine for 20 years, and I've never seen anything like Jonathan's transformation. Love literally healed his heart, and together, Jonathan and Naomi have shown all of us what it looks like when two people use their love to heal the world around them. As the evening wound down, Jonathan and Naomi sat together on the garden swing they had installed the previous spring, watching their guests dance and laugh under string lights that twinkled like stars. "Are you happy, Mrs. Pierce?" Jonathan asked, still getting used to the sound of her married name. "Happier than I ever dreamed possible, Mr. Pierce. What do you think our life will look like in 10 years? Naomi leaned against his shoulder and considered the question. "I think we'll have expanded new horizons to serve thousands of people. I think you'll be known more for your philanthropy than your business success. I think we'll have children who grow up understanding that their privilege comes with responsibility to help others." "Children? Is that something you want? With you?" "Yes, absolutely. I want to raise children who have your compassion and strength. And your determination and generosity." 6 months later, their first annual report for New Horizons Community Services showed results that exceeded even their most optimistic projections. They had helped over 300 people transition from homelessness to stable housing, provided job training to 150 individuals, and offered mental health services to nearly 500 people. The program had become a model that other cities were studying and replicating. Jonathan had stepped back from day-to-day business operations, focusing instead on strategic planning and philanthropic projects. His stress levels were lower than they had been in decades, and his relationship with Naomi continued to be the source of his greatest happiness and stability. Naomi had graduated summa cum laude with her bachelor's degree in social work and was now pursuing a master's degree part-time while serving as executive director of New Horizons. Her professors consistently praised her innovative approaches to social problems and her natural leadership abilities. But the most significant development came one evening in December, as they decorated their Christmas tree together. "Jonathan, I have some news," Naomi said, hanging an ornament they had made from a photo of their wedding day. "Good news, I hope?" "The best news. We're going to have a baby." Jonathan set down the string of lights he was untangling and stared at her with wonder. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious. I'm about 8 weeks along." He swept her into his arms, spinning her around the living room while both of them laughed with pure joy. "We're going to be parents? We're going to be parents." As they held each other in the glow of the Christmas tree lights, both of them reflected on how dramatically their lives had changed since that rainy night when Naomi had found Jonathan collapsed on a sidewalk. What had begun as a simple act of human kindness had become a love story that had transformed both of their lives and created positive change for hundreds of other people. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you had walked past me that night?" Jonathan asked. "Never. Some things are just meant to be, Jonathan. We were meant to find each other, meant to heal each other, and meant to build this life together. I love you, Naomi Pierce." "I love you too, Jonathan Pierce." Outside, snow began to fall softly over the city, covering everything in a blanket of fresh white. Inside their warm home, Jonathan and Naomi made plans for their future, secure in the knowledge that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Their love story had proved that healing comes in many forms, that kindness creates miracles, and that sometimes the most beautiful relationships grow from the most unexpected circumstances. They had found each other when both were broken, and together they had created something whole, beautiful, and lasting. The doctors had failed to heal the billionaire's heart, but a homeless girl's love had succeeded where medicine could not. And in saving him, she had saved herself, creating a future neither of them had dared to dream of when their story began with a simple act of compassion on a rainy night. What started as a chance encounter between two broken souls became a love story that changed not only their lives, but the lives of hundreds of others. Sometimes the most powerful healing comes not from medicine, but from love, kindness, and the courage to open our hearts to someone who needs us. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe and share your thoughts about love's power to transform lives in the comments below.